Métis are among the fastest growing population in Canada, now estimated at 452,000 strong. With the growing numbers comes opportunity for industry and government to tap into this valuable resource. But in order for Aboriginal peoples to become vital partners in a thriving Canadian economy, they need access to skills and employment training.
That person now is a truck driver, that person now is a nurse, this person is now, a plumber, carpenter.
David Chartrand, president of the Manitoba Métis Federation, today sees the hopes and dreams in the eyes of Métis youth. He joins his counterparts from across the Métis Nation homeland, from Ontario to British Columbia, who are convinced in order to build a strong workforce to meet the needs of industry and government, Aboriginal people need access to programming such as Aboriginal skills and employment training partnerships.
You look at the variety of different skill sets that you've been able to develop and train. But I hope you look the next step over. You just change those children's lives. The worst thing we do for ourselves, we don't brag enough about the great things we do. We don't. But it's in our culture, both Métis First Nation and also the Inuit. We're not there to brag about what we do. But if we don't tell people what we do enough, then people don't think we're of value.
I just want to say that the leadership, we may be there and we may be talking and advocating, on your behalf, but it's you at the community level, at the ground level, that make the difference. It's you that the people interact with. It's you that provides the programs and services. It's you that knows what is needed. So, thank you.
Robert Smith and James Sutherland with Service Canada discussed how the federal department can more cooperatively and effectively work with ASETS staff by giving them the tools, such as financial officers, to offer guidance to help staff better meet the financial, procedural, and program challenges faced with running large projects. Sutherland said industry not only creates jobs, but they're hiring Aboriginal employees with the necessary skills and training offered through the ASETS program.
Just under 100,000, 93,000 asset clients have been served between 2010 and when they did the data. So not the full 5 years, but 3.5 or so. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people that have come through the door looking for service. 39,000, so just under 40,000, or 42% of the total number, either found employment or self-employment or returned to school.
Discussions also focused on the need for more industries to recognize and tap into what many consider the underutilized Aboriginal skilled workforce in Canada, rather than relying on immigration to fill the void. Plus, the conference examined the importance of renewing the ASETS 5-year program.
I believe that the ARTA has been very beneficial. I say this is where the boots hit the ground. This is where our people get an opportunity to be trained for the local industry and employment opportunities. And I also believe that it should be more long-term, like we should be looking at a 10-year agreement. And I'm a bit concerned the amount of money both the federal and the provincial government put into immigration strategies to train people coming to Canada first to speak English and then for employment. So that money, I believe, could be better spent toward the underutilized Aboriginal population.
Nelson Leon believes a long-term commitment to the ASETS program would create a level of certainty that would allow for uninterrupted planning and training necessary for Aboriginal people to gain the skills needed to get a good job so they can support their families and communities. Researcher Dr. Donna Wood spent 2 years looking at the Aboriginal Labor Force Development Strategy started in the 1980s that brought together business, labor, and the 2 levels of government to influence labor market decisions. The pathway principles focused on local decision-making, funding stability, Aboriginal structure and delivery control, a proactive approach to employment equity, and reducing barriers to program access. Dr. Wood has found that the ASETS program is a success based on the statistics she's been able to find. However, ASETS has experienced a loss of autonomy, and it's not seen a significant increase in funding levels since 1996. Her advice?
I'd say diminished federal support of the basket of programs. New principles have been implemented slowly over time. They have an impact on how you deliver your programs. Increase in Aboriginal people to be served. The adding of new programs and the increased fragmentation, those are deliberate decisions, and is that the way it should be structured? And I especially want to point to the new actors, especially provinces. But despite all of this that I've told you, there is no question from everything that I've seen, there is firm ongoing support for the ASETS model.
Katie Mata with the Canadian Aboriginal and Minority Supplier Council discussed ways to build partnership opportunities with large corporations. The nonprofit group's core mission is to look at facilitating opportunities and championing the inclusion of Aboriginal and minority suppliers in the supply chain of large corporations across Canada to help Aboriginal businesses grow and create jobs.
The number one measurement of success is somebody in a job?
The ideas heard from the guest speakers flowed into a series of breakout sessions at the ASETS conference. Participants held detailed discussions about partnerships, modern treaties, the pre-employment to job training continuum, and processes.
Would be the methodology for monitoring would need to change from the current processes that we would have in an ASETS where everything is cut and dried.
J.P. Gladue, president of the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business, which helps to build relationships between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal industry, reminded ASET delegates that Aboriginal peoples in Canada have always had an entrepreneurial spirit. Today, they continue to have an inner drive and determination to fend for themselves and support their families as long as roadblocks don't stand in the way.
So I hope we can start to come to the table as a nation and find ways to work together. But that's not going to happen unless we start to align our strengths a little bit better, manage our weaknesses, and remain open to change.
As a member of the federal government's National Aboriginal Economic Development Advisory Board, Dr. Marie Delorme says they've made some key recommendations.
The board has made some very strong recommendations to the federal government around focusing on K-12 education programs, including vocational and skills training. They recommended that the government develop a large-scale training and certification program that increases the participation of Indigenous people, and of course, they provided support to the ASETS program.
And I guess that what I would offer is that the ASET community needs to consider, as a program delivery partner, what this partnership really is all about and what it looks like, what the common goals are that everyone can agree upon, and what kind of roles and responsibilities do various parts of this partnership have, whether it's government, whether it's asset holders, whether it's the client that is being served.
While the Aboriginal Skills and Employment Training Partnerships program is seen as a successful model to build upon, Alan Clark outlined that it's clear from what he heard at the ASETS conference that in order to make the program even more successful, that ASETS needs to exercise greater autonomy in terms of what they're trying to achieve. It was also highlighted that processes, monitoring, and reporting needs to be simplified, and that a long-term financial strategy is required to allow for uninterrupted planning and training of Aboriginal peoples, so they can get the skills needed to prepare for, to find, and to keep jobs in today's ever-challenging economy. Through the ASETS program, First Nation, Inuit, and Métis are looking to meet today's labor market challenges head-on.